Money FM 89.3. Best of breakfast. Morning Shot.
Yes, welcome to Morning Shot. 2 years on from the October 7 attacks, the war in Gaza has dragged on with no clear end in sight. But a new development this week could mark a turning point. U.S. President Donald Trump has unveiled a sweeping 20-point peace plan, one that Israel has accepted and Hamas has now partially agreed to, setting the stage for fresh negotiations in Cairo. But with questions still looming over Hamas's disarmament, Israel's internal politics, and the limits of U.S. influence, can this plan really deliver a lasting ceasefire, or will it be another fleeting pause in a protracted conflict? To help us unpack the latest developments and what to expect from the upcoming talks, we're joined by Dr. Lincoln Mitchell, professor at Columbia University's School of International and Public Affairs. Dr. Mitchell, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Very good, thanks. Thanks for coming on. Now, first and foremost, President Trump has put forward a sweeping 20-point Gaza peace plan. This includes a technocratic governing body for Gaza under international oversight, large-scale humanitarian aid, and a phased Israeli withdrawal tied to demilitarization. First and foremost, why does this plan matter at this juncture, and how different is it from past efforts to bring peace to Gaza?
With regards to your second question, it's not all that different, and that's one of the reasons it's important at this moment. At this moment, it matters because we are 2 years into a war, and the damage in Gaza is almost immeasurable at this point. But moreover, the demand within Israel to end this war is much greater than it's been at any time before. 6 months into this war, the people in Israel were saying, let's finish the job. Today, other than the government, the majority of people are tired of the war. They want the hostages back. They recognize that while there's no love lost, obviously, for Hamas, Hamas's ability to do meaningful damage to Israel is much less than it was on, October 8th of 2023. Israel has decimated Hamas as a fighting force. So to some extent, the big picture goal of that war has been accomplished, and the people in Israel want the hostages back and to end the war. The people in Gaza, clearly, they want to get food in, they want to get medical supplies, and they want to stop having to worry about Israeli bombs dropping from the sky. And the fact that their messianic leadership, which isn't even in Gaza, is willing to sacrifice their lives, they're not interested in that anymore. So this is why this moment is, I think, critical.
All right, let's turn our attention to Hamas, then, which you've briefly alluded to. Now, they agreed as of Friday, that's October the 3rd, to release hostages and allow a technocratic body to govern Gaza, but they stopped short of disarmament or staged Israeli withdrawal. How do you think that shapes the prospects for a real ceasefire?
Ultimately, the problem here, the big picture problem, is that everybody wants this deal except for Hamas and the Israeli government. They're the only ones who lose here. What Hamas is agreeing to is something they could have had on October 12th of 2023. Release the hostages, lay down your arms, and this war is over. So to agree to this war is for Hamas to recognize that they have lost this war, at least on the battlefield, and that they have put the people of Gaza through absolutely terrible, horrific conditions. Now, to some extent, Hamas knew they were doing that. That's why they did this attack on October 7th, so that Israel would respond this way. But I think, on the one hand, global public opinion has rallied so much behind Palestine and indeed behind Hamas. And then to give that all back because the global hegemon says enough of this already and rallies forces to bring this to an end in a way that I'm not a big fan of the current American president, but this is a good deal for the people of Israel and the people of Gaza if he can make it happen.
What does President Trump's intervention or his calls for a halt to the bombing say about America's influence over Israel right now, as well as the limits of Washington's leverage in the conflict?
Well, the United States of America has had a deep and complicated relationship with Israel for a long time, a very long time, specifically with the current Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, who's now on his fourth or something American president. The difference is that Netanyahu has no leverage over Trump. Trump is elected by the most hawkish elements of, remember, and this is something that I think non-American listeners and even American listeners don't understand. In America, the most pro-Israel sentiment is from fundamentalist Christians, not Jews, right? Like you might think. So those fundamentalist Christians are the base of Trump's support. They love him. They love Israel, but they will side with Trump over Netanyahu. Netanyahu has no card to play here. He's told the Israeli people, I'm the Trump whisperer. I'm the guy they can go to Trump. And now Trump is saying, enough of this. We're going to end this thing. And Netanyahu has much, much less leverage than he would over a Biden or an Obama or even a George W. Bush. So by kind of talking about his relationship with Trump and how Trump was going to support him. And Israel is one of the few countries in the world where Trump's numbers are positive. Trump's much more popular in the United States in Israel than he is in the United States. So Netanyahu can't really do much here. If Trump says this is going to happen, he can't say to Trump, I'm not listening to you, the way he could have to Biden. Saying Trump is impulsive enough that he could, stop assistance, or he could continue to attack Netanyahu in the media. These are things that Netanyahu doesn't want.
What does it say about Trump's own political capital that he's cast himself as the only person capable of achieving peace, even proposing to personally chair a board of peace to oversee Gaza's transition?
Well, again, we should be careful about associating any kind of profound or strategic thinking with President Trump. This is a visceral political actor. But it's also somebody who craves the national and global spotlight. And the bringing peace to this region is the magic goal of every American president. It's that unreachable, unattainable, beautiful thing they all want. And Trump is certainly not immune to that. And he's talked a lot about the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, Netanyahu gave this odd letter where he said he's nominated you because I'm sure the Nobel Peace Commission really wants to listen to a war criminal like Netanyahu when it comes to recommendations. But Trump wants this. And if Trump can bring peace to this, he can make a plausible case for it. So the plaudits that he will get for doing this are enormous. And then I think that he recognizes that Netanyahu doesn't treat Trump the way Trump likes to be treated. He doesn't listen to him. Israel is extremely dependent on the United States. And if we go back and look at that, I know it's a different country, but the way Volodymyr Zelensky was treated at the White House, there's hints of that with Netanyahu where there is this increasingly anti-Israel sentiment within the Republican Party, often rooted in really ugly anti-Semitic tropes. And his party is not as unanimous here, and which oddly enough gives him more leverage over Netanyahu.
Let's get to the negotiations themselves, Dr. Mitchell. We know that indirect talks on ending Israel's war in Gaza have started in Egypt, but few details have emerged. We have delegation from Israel, Hamas, and U.S. mediators involved as well. Given how much remains unresolved, how realistic is it to expect meaningful progress in just a few days of negotiations?
Well, the fact that everyone's there and the fact that U.S. is helping mediate this is important because the U.S. can push. The U.S. is the only country in the world that can push Israel, right? It's important for people to understand that, and we all saw last week in New York where Netanyahu made a speech and so many UN delegates, walked out of the convention. But the contempt that the Israeli people have for the UN is enormous, right? This goes back to 50 years ago with the Zionism is Racism resolution, which in the eyes of a lot of Israelis just meant, okay, the United Nations has cast itself unequivocally as anti-Israel. We don't have to listen to them anymore. But the United States is different, right? This is Israelis' patron. Israel cannot exist without support from the United States. So if they get them to the table, they have to pay attention. Hamas, they don't like the United States. So they will see this as an American-backed peace plan, which it is. They will see this as something that kind of means victory for Israel. So they have to live with that. On the other hand, Trump has made a threat here using language that I won't repeat on the radio, but he has said, let's just say this, if Hamas does not agree, there will be severe consequences for the people of Gaza. And what Hamas has to think about is the people of Gaza, who they're telling the world we lead, if we sentence tens of thousands and more of them to death because this is what Israel could do, where does that put them? So there is a possibility. And again, remember, you can agree to a deal, the deal isn't, there's no deal that's done until every last hostage, living and dead, is out of Gaza. And that is something that's where Netanyahu has leverage, because he knows that if he does this deal and then Hamas doesn't deliver those hostages, then the Israeli people are going to say, okay, do what you need to do. We don't this is what the Israeli people want. And Hamas knows, on the one hand, that's a tremendous gesture of goodwill. I mean, to the extent that keeping a hostage for 2 years is a gesture of goodwill, right? I know that the rest of the world hasn't paid a lot of attention to this. I mean, the Red Cross hasn't bothered to visit the hostages, and no one outside of the United States and Israel seems to care. But generally speaking, massacring 1,000 civilians and taking 200 hostage is an enormous crime against humanity. But once they return those hostages, they have no leverage. They have nothing that Israel wants for them anymore. So they have to play this very carefully from a strategic perspective. But if they don't return the hostages, that's the stumbling block that I think the Trump administration will draw the line. You can play around with numbers or a prisoner exchange. You can play around with what exactly the post-peace deal Gaza leadership looks like, what the administrative zone looks like, even borders. But you cannot play around with hostages. But for Hamas to return those hostages, they're giving up the one leverage point they have. But let's just say this. They have to return the hostages. It would be foolish not to, but I can see why they might not see it that way.
So looking ahead, Dr. Mitchell, if both sides move ahead with the first phases of this plan, what do you think the broader implications are? Is there an end in sight to this conflict?
I think there is, and this is one of the places where, I mean, you've been on your show before. I'm not always the most optimistic fellow in the world, but, you know, last week or earlier in September, we're now in October, a number of powerful Western countries recognized the Palestinian state, countries like Portugal, France, Canada. These are powerful Western countries. And remember that while some might say that, okay, the Israeli government doesn't want to see the Palestinian state recognized, but neither does Hamas, because what this means is it's an implicit call for a two-state solution, which we are told is dead as an idea by people who don't want it. But many of us believe this is the only place this has to go. The state of Israel is not going away, regardless of what people in Hamas and their supporters around the world might think. This is a powerful state with a powerful patron, and populated by a people who have ties to that land going back 5,000 years, right? I mean, you know, last week was the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, right? Jews all over the world, as they have been doing for 5,000 years, fasted and said a prayer, and said prayers. And in all those prayers, the word Israel appears over and over again, right? So, you know that whole notion that Hamas has told the world that Israel this is some European project is nonsense. Israel's not going away. But the Palestinian people, you know, unless the worst elements of Israeli military plans win out and there's some kind of terrible ethnic cleansing campaign, but short of that, they're not going away either. So it's two bodies of land, two states. Yes, there are elements within Palestinian society and Israeli society that want the whole body of land. So this slogan from the river to the sea, you know, both there are some Israelis and some, you know, Palestinians who want everything from the river to the sea. They're not going to get it. They're not going to get it. So once you get real pressure from outside, this two-state solution can get traction again, and that's where this always has to go.
All right, a stepping stone towards lasting peace or a temporary pause in a much deeper conflict. The verdict is still out on the latest peace plan that has been proposed by U.S. President Donald Trump to end the conflict between Israel and Hamas. And we've been in conversation with Dr. Lincoln Mitchell, professor at Columbia University's School of International and Public Affairs. Dr. Mitchell, as always, fantastic speaking with you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, have a good one. Stay with Money FM 89.3.
Money FM 89.3.